Hi guys, welcome to the next video on the Porsche 912 where things have got a bit drastic. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is replace the bottom of this longitudinal panel. So you can see it's all holed up and rusty. And we've got a repair section to just do the bottom of this. And then that will be that near side pretty much ready for the floor. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the right hand side of the vehicle now, just to show you exactly why we're going to take this whole longitudinal out all the way to the front and this inner quarter panel. We'll start at the back. You've got some pretty gnarly welding there, but wait, there's more. All of this patchwork is pretty grim. Look at all of this. We're going to repair this panel. It's just this end of it really that is rotten. Don't know if you can see all of that bulge and damage through here. That shouldn't be like that. Seatbelt mount's gone. More dodgy welding along here. Then no metal left there at all. So yeah, it's all just pretty horrible. So the best thing really is to remove this whole longitudinal here and remove this. I'm going to weld some bracing in up to the roof because we're going to have all of this floating basically. So we need to keep that in place. I want to weld a brace across here to keep that in shape, and then from B pillar to B pillar as well. So yeah, a lot of cutting and grinding now. Let's go. So just while I'm here with everything out of this side, it makes access a lot easier for this. So I'm going to cut this out and I'll make a new piece and I'll probably weld that in once we've got everything else back in. Okay, so I've laid the longitudinal panel out next to the original one and the inner quarter panel, and I've just compared them. I needed to see what differences there were. So on the quarter panel, we've got these holes for the oil tank for a 911, and the back edge is slightly different. We've got a seatbelt mount that needs to be put in there, and that one needs to be removed. The differences on the longitudinal, we've got a couple of bits here and here, just to show you, one tab and that. And then at the front, we've got the heater outlet and no heater outlet. So I'm going to make those changes just to get them right, and then we can look at fitting them back to the car. So the first thing I need to do is remove this engine mount bracket. I'm then going to clean it up, bolt it to the chassis jig, which will help us line up the new longitudinal panel. Okay, so we've now cleaned up this engine mount bracket, bolted it to our jig so we know that's in the right place, and yeah, everything looks like it fits quite nicely. So yeah, pleased with that. I did notice, and this is the first 912 I've done, to be fair, so we've only really done 911s before. I've got to make an extra strengthening patch that goes in here and just strengthens up the back of the engine mount. And then I'm going to move on to this. So I'm going to remake the flanges on that, cut out all the grot on here, down here, little rustra hole there, and I'll cut out underneath, but I'll probably repair that section when it's on the rollover jig or on the ramp, just to make life a bit easier. So yeah, let's get cracking on that. So here I'm just using a simple bit of cardboard to make a template for each section of this panel. I can then mark it out onto the metal, cut it to shape, and then add the flanges and other shapes that I need to do. So that's the top section made. Now I just need to scribe around it, trim out the old panel and weld it in. So this is looking a little less scary now. We've got the longitudinal panel in. This is only a mock-up, so it will come back off to be prepped for welding. But as you've seen, we've now got the engine mount in, well, screwed in. And I've started repairing this rear cross member. It's only tacked in, so once the longitudinal comes off, I'll fully weld that in. We've still got to weld in the strengthener in here, but yeah, it's all clamped up, looking a bit less scary. So the next job is to fit the heater tube, and unfortunately that is still part of the old car. So I need to cut all of this open, remove the tube, and then weld it into the body. So I've prepped and painted the heater tube, and I've got a few more bits to swap over to the longitudinal, like this seatbelt mount and rear seat mount. And I cut a bit of the old chassis out to use as a template. So that's my next job. So here I'm just fully welding the heater tube into the longitudinal panel. There's a few other bits I need to do now, such as welding in the seat mounting bracket and also that strengthener at the back by the engine mount. With the longitudinal panel out of the way, I can now fully weld in the rear cross member repair piece. So that's the end of the cross member repaired, all welded in, ground down, spot welded, and then I cut off the underside as well. So we'll remake that later when I can get it on the rollover jig or on the ramp. So that's the longitudinal all prepped and ready to weld in. I've copper weld through the areas where the rear cross member mounts, the engine bracket mounts, and then on the inside we've got the strengthener spot welded in there, tubes all welded in, seatbelt mount is welded in, and the seat runner mount is welded in. So this is now ready to fit. Next up, I need to modify the rear quarter panel. I've made these discs to fill the holes. They can now be welded in and ground back for a seamless finish. Now I need to swap over some tabs from the old quarter panel and drill the hole for the seatbelt mount. Finally, I need to prep all of the mating surfaces ready for welding, not forgetting the weld through primer. Okay, so we have everything prepped now for welding. I've put some paint on the areas on the longitudinal panel, so that's all ready to go, and copper weld through on all the edges. The quarter panels are all prepped and ready to go. Obviously we've welded up the holes there that we didn't need. And the quarter panel actually already comes with a kidney bowl and jacking point. So that will save us a bit of time. But it does get a bit awkward because normally this panel would spot weld through to the inner sill, which is why we've prepped the inner sill as well. So we've got to fit all of that together, which is a little bit fiddly, but no real problem. And then we're going to use these holes to plug weld through onto the inner sill. The only other panel I've prepped is this. So this is a strengthener that goes on the inside once the quarter panel's in place, and it welds down to the longitudinal panel as well. Not sure what you call this. That's obviously the kidney bowl. I reckon we should call that the witch's hat. Right, let's get cracking. Okay, so the quarter panel and inner sill are all now clamped in place. I use these tech screws. There's another one. See, I've used a few along there. Some people might not like that. You can buy proper Cleco clips, which look like this, with these pliers to insert them. I used to use these a fair amount, but if I'm honest, they do the same job as a tech screw. Tech screws are quicker to use, they're self-drilling, and less faff than these, in my opinion. So yeah, that's why I now use these. So now it's time to get the spot welder fired up, and we'll yeah, get cracking. Well, that is this corner done now. Really pleased with how this has come out. As you can see, all factory type spot welds. The spot welder really took a pasting this afternoon. All along this middle sill as well. Really pleased with how this is looking. So the next thing will be to attack this inner longitudinal here, because the inside of it's rotten, and then we can do this back panel, and then that is pretty much us done up to the A pillars at the front. So yeah, really pleased with the progress this week. So if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.